the Boston College Eagles have their bowl opponent and location. And I got to say, they both are kind of interesting.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you all for listening and subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. This NFL season, you can bet a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. This weekend, it was kind of quiet for Boston College football. No real transfer portal news in or out. Khalil Ali, a safety who is a sophomore. He's the latest BC player to hit the portal, but that was on Thursday. We haven't heard anything since. The portal opens officially, but we're not here to talk about the portal. We're here to talk about the bowl. But we're going to talk about a few other things. We're going to talk about basketball faltering again. Was this football season a success? And then the big news of the weekend, BC football has their bowl game, and they get to play a team with a big history. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Well, let's get into it. On Sunday, we got the college football playoff rankings and who made the playoffs. Congratulations to SMU and Clemson, two ACC competitors making the playoffs. And too bad for you, Alabama. I have no sympathy for you. You didn't make it. Tough. But then the bowls came out. The bowls put Boston College in a situation where I thought this was what was going to happen. I had heard buzz all weekend it was going to be the Pinstripe Bowl. I know there were some folks out there saying the Military Bowl. I saw one of those bowls that if like BC got bumped enough, they would get out of it. Well, it was the Pinstripe Bowl. This is the third Pinstripe Bowl for BC since 2014. It's their first since 2017 when BC played Iowa. And this time, Boston College gets the Nebraska Cornhuskers, another 7-5 team with a fun quarterback in Dylan Raiola, a true freshman who a 5-star that I think a lot of folks are expecting big things out of. And they've got obviously a very good head coach with NFL experience, former Carolina Panthers head coach, former Baylor head coach, Matt Rule. So this is a team that almost beat Ohio State. They beat Deion's Colorado team early in the year. Their defense has only allowed, I think it was 19.8 points per game. They're a tough team. And when you play a big blue, and they're a blue blood team, right? They're a team that can, when they're humming, they're good. They are a team that do not have a ton of opt-outs. Their running back, Emmett Johnson, who had like 700 rushing yards, he's coming back on top of their other running back who has like 12 touchdowns. You look at their statistics, their defense sticks out a bit, as in like they've got a good defense. Their offense hasn't really, opened a ton of eyes. Raiola, he's a true freshman. He's thrown, I think, 12 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. But he's dangerous. He's going to be a good quarterback. He's a guy that's going to cause some problems. And so this is a fun matchup. You look at the options of what BC could have got. I had said all along, I was hoping that they would get, what was it, the Grow Rate Bowl or whatever the heck that was. It was the Quick Lane Bowl and play Toledo because they would have been a 14-point favorite in that game. Grabbing an 8th win, no matter where they're playing, would have been just nice. My top priority if I was Boston College is to get that 8th win to get some momentum going. Now, the big question for this game, it's going to be on December 28th at noon in New York, is the status of Donovan Azaraku. Obviously, he's going to be the biggest player in this game. He's going to potentially be an All-American. He leads the nations in sacks. He has made it sound like he's going to play. And I love his enthusiasm that might be the case. But as I've said all along, it just takes one agent, one manager to get in his ear and say, Donovan, if you play in the Pinstripe Bowl, it could cost you millions of dollars. And then he'll change his mind. Look at what Christian Mahogany did last year. He had the same kind of mentality, And then, what was it, like 2 days before the bowl, we find out he isn't going to play. So I don't blame him if he doesn't play, but that's a big factor because if you go to FanDuel right now, BC is a 6.5 point underdog in this game. If Azaraku isn't playing, I get that because their defensive line needs him to play. That's a big factor. Ozzie Trapilo, will he play? You're going to have to go with Kevin Klein, and you have Jude Bowery, who you don't know what his health is going to be. He had what looked like a pretty nasty concussion against Pitt that season finale. And I'm not sure if he'll be ready to come back, but if you're down your starting 2 tackles, that's bad too. So those are just some things that I'm looking at just from a roster perspective of what this team could be looking at and how it could be different than the team we just saw against Pitt. So that's just that's one thing I'm watching. Now, the Pinstripe Bowl gives Boston College a chance to have Bill O'Brien excise another big demon. The worst game I have ever watched that they were competitive in. 2015 against Wake Forest was the worst game I've ever watched, but that was worse in a different manner, as in that game just was bad. The game against Penn State in 2014 in the Pinstripe Bowl was the worst ending I've ever seen of a game BC should have won. Mike Knoll, I'm sorry I keep bringing it up. It's 10 years later, and I know he sometimes listens to this podcast. I'm sorry. That missed extra point kills me. It killed me. I was watching in a ski house in Colorado, and I remember watching the game and then throwing myself on the floor when that happened. It was so gut-wrenching. And, Penn State goes on to win it, and that was the end of that. Now, you fast forward to 2017, BC also plays in the Pinstripe Bowl. They also lose because they play against Iowa, even though BC had A.J. Dillon in that game. The Pinstripe Bowl, the Yankee Stadium, was a tundra. It was, from what everyone says, the coldest game they've ever been to. And the players had the wrong footing, shoes on. They couldn't get any footing. It was a nightmare. So you get to that point with a running back who could do a lot of different things, but now he can't do anything because he can't run because the fielding is bad. BC ends up losing to Iowa. Now you get Nebraska. The game is at noon, so it's an earlier game than the games that they played before. Because I remember the first Pinstripe Bowl was a night game because I remember watching it was dark. The second one was definitely evening or late afternoon because I was at dinner watching it when it happened. This one's at noon, so hopefully the weather will be warmer. You'll have the sun. It'll be more attractive for fans. And I know a lot of BC fans are in the New York City area. It's an awesome opportunity for them to get to the game. I give credit to Nebraska. Of course, they're going to pack that place because Nebraska fans they travel. They're going to travel well for this game. It's going to be a fun one. BC and Nebraska have never played against each other, which is crazy because they're both, old programs that have been at the D1 level forever. The fact that they've never crossed paths is nuts. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be a fun one. You're going to have to stay tuned to hear more as we get closer to that game. It's December 28th. That's 20 days away. They're going to start packing those practices in soon, which again is a great thing for this program. You want to talk about what this team needs. They needed those practices. They're going to start getting them. Working with Grayson James, working with some of these young guys that are just looking to continue to develop under Bill O'Brien, they're going to get those opportunities. And that is another big positive for this bowl. And I'm not disappointed at this bowl choice. I'm going to tell you right now, it's better than the Military Bowl. The one thing I did not want to happen was a bowl game against a service academy because BC's been banged up. They've lost Cam Arnold. They're going to potentially lose Donovan Azaraku. You do not want to play a team that is disciplined and can control the clock with their awful triple option that can just take 10 minutes off the clock every drive they get because you can't stop them. You don't want to face them when you're down arguably 2 of your best defensive linemen. And you don't know what Cam Horsley is doing either. That could be 3 of them. That would be a nightmare. I'd rather play Nebraska. I would rather have played Michigan or Minnesota. This is a good fit for BC. Now, in our second segment, now that we're in this spot, is this season a success for Boston College football? I'll get into what that looks like in just a moment. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. Its guaranteed perfection is everything that you're looking for your holiday gift. Now you can get your unforgettable holiday gift with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gifts packages featured gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more. Save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchases may apply. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. And if you are done with this podcast and you are looking for that second listen, we're a nice tight 25 minutes, but maybe you have a 50-minute commute or a 50-minute workout, go check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. They're going to be talking all about the playoff rankings, those teams that got in. I'm sure they're going to get into the SMU versus Alabama thing and how that impacts. Check them out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Boston College sits at 7-5. Remember, the expectations by FanDuel and many betting odds was that BC was going to be 4-5 and finish near the bottom of the ACC, if not the bottom. Under first-year head coach Bill O'Brien, you had BC go out there and win your first game against Florida State. Now, this is, a game that you won, and at the time, it looked massive. Florida State was a top 10 team at that point. They clearly were not by the end of the season, but you won that game. You won games against Michigan State. You beat Syracuse, a 9-3 team. You beat Pitt, a bowl team. UNC, a bowl team. Western Kentucky, a bowl team that won the Conference USA. You've won all these big games. And still I have heard people that have said this was not a successful season. And to those people, I think you're nuts. I'm just going to say that right now. Like, you lost your starting quarterback in Thomas Castellanos. And I want to say this. For those folks that said, they should, if Bill O'Brien didn't believe in Thomas Castellanos, he should have never started him. And B, why was he continuing to play? There's 2 real answers here. First of all, I think that Bill O'Brien really did want to give Thomas Castellanos a chance. Secondly, it's been coming out more and more that Grayson James was his choice to start this whole season off, but an injury, and I was there at practice, he was gone for a while, kept him out. And that lat injury, it was a lat, I think it's like the shoulder area. I'm not a doctor, folks, but I think that's where it is, right? That cost him for a while. And that's why when you watched Grayson James against Western Kentucky, he looked completely different than the Grayson James we saw against Syracuse because he was hurt. That's why Thomas Castellanos had to get that start. So were there opportunities that BC could have taken more advantage of? I only think of one game that BC probably should have won that they didn't, and that was UVA. You look at, I hear folks telling me like, oh, Louisville is another one. No. Look at the EPA and look at the, how well Louisville was playing in that game versus how well BC was playing in that game. It was very clear that Louisville was the better team and that BC got lucky for that first half. It was not their game. UVA was because Thomas Castellanos couldn't stop turning the ball over. So I think BC, for the most part, played up to their potential. I think they did it with a roster that was set up by another coach. And I think they did it with a quarterback that was set up by another coach. To finish the season 7-5 is not the end all be all. It's not like you're saying this is like the best thing that ever happened to this program. But given the schedule you just played, with all the things that happened, with a quarterback that you thought was going to be the future of this program, falling apart and quitting the team, and then replacing him with a guy that got booted by FIU, and having him become this really strong quarterback. And then on top of all this, you have Donovan Azaraku become the best defensive player in the ACC. Heck yeah, I'm going to say this is a successful season. 7-5 is good. when you consider everything that you had going into this year. This was not a complete team. Bill O'Brien did the best he could with the guys that he had, and he showed progress and development through the season. You started the season off with a good game that you basically, I would say, used the template that you used with Jeff Hafley that at the end of last year. You tried to develop this team into a passing offense under Thomas Castellanos. That did not work. Things fell apart, but then you rebuilt it with a guy that you could, and then all of a sudden you're heading into postseason play on a huge high right now. Boston College is playing at a very high level. They beat 3 out of their last 4 teams. The one game that they lost was against SMU, who's in the playoffs, who was, a field goal away from winning potentially winning the ACC championship. You have that happen, and this is without even getting any of the talent that you want on this roster. And I'm sure Bill will tell you that he likes the guys that he has, and I'm sure he does. They work their tails off. But now he has a chance to go into the portal, get guys that can really complement what he needs and some of the deficits he's seeing, punting, and fix some of the issues that they had that really hampered them at times, punting. And so I feel like that's going to be something that will help for 2025. So when I unveil everything, it's obviously not done yet. But I have a hard time evaluating bowl games. Especially are you going to really consider, so say potentially BC loses to Nebraska, but they don't have Ozzie Trapilo and Donovan Azaraku because they opt out of that game. How do you evaluate that game and say, oh, that was a terrible end of the season. That was how they lost. This shows that they had nothing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I hear this kind of nonsense. And I think to myself, this was not the same BC team. So I don't really want to evaluate this season off of a game that BC is playing potentially without some of their best players. That being said, if they win it too, I'm going to take my cake and eat it too, because if they can win without those guys, then that's good too. I'm just saying I'm not going to get down on them if they lose. So that's just where I'm at. You may disagree with how I think of it, and that's okay. If you think that even without Azaraku, you're like, oh, well, they should still win it, that's your priority. And hey, man, if that's your prerogative, go for it, because I'm not there yet. But I'm going to say if they do win, though, that's going to set this season up. I mean, talk about momentum. You have done something potentially that you haven't done in 15 years. You have 8 wins with a first-year head coach. Man, that is tight. That is something that's very good for this program. So I'm hoping that Azaraku plays. I don't have hope that he does, but I'm hoping that he can do it. So we'll have to wait and see. Now, in our final segment, I'm going to switch it over to basketball. Let's get down in the dumps again and talk about a team that lost their 3rd straight game, and they had it. They just let it slip through their fingers. I'll get into that in just a moment. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You can also do it for a game. For instance, I'm going to tell you one I won on last night. I was watching the Clemson SMU game. I remembered how SMU stormed back against BC, and I started to see it happening, and I got live at odds at SMU plus 7.5. I think it was like halftime. And I'm like, man, they're going to come storming back. Hey, what happens? They come storming back and I win. So all you got to do is visit fanduel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that's fanduel.com today. Never waste a punch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black of Eagle Insider. Thank you all who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. And I want to thank you all who have also checked out Locked On ACC. They got a lot to talk about with all this change going on in college football. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono are on it. Check out Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, I have had a hard time talking about basketball this year. And I got I got a couple people that were telling me, "Hey AJ, you're being a little tough on the basketball team right now." And I wanted to say, yeah, I have been tough on them. They did win that multi-team tournament in the Cayman Islands, and credit for beating Boise State, a very good team. But what I was really saying last week was the past 7 days for BC basketball have been horrid. Losing to Dartmouth is inexcusable. Losing as well to South Carolina in a game you just looked like completely not in it was also really bad. So, yeah, when I watch that and I react and say, yeah, if they keep playing like that, they're not winning any ACC games. I feel like I'm justified. I feel like I can be hard and I don't need to pile on them. It was just bad basketball. And I had a real hard time watching those two games and saying to myself, "Oh, they're going to be able to fix this. Oh, there's this that makes this team better than I expected, or they're going to be able to get this part going." I just hadn't seen it. Well, the Wake Forest game, their ACC opener, happened this weekend on Saturday. A noon start on the road. Again, a game I did not have high expectations on. And credit to BC. They came out storming. They had like a 15-5 lead. Dion Brown was playing much better than he has all season. They're hitting 3-pointers. They're getting things going. But like everything this season, it starts off here, at the top, and then it just goes. And what ended up happening in this game was an issue that I've seen in different games, but it just really, reared its ugly head, which is you have some issues with your big guys. Chad Venning, I was probably one of the more excited guys to see him get here because I heard from St. Bonaventure people that this was a guy that as long as he stayed out of foul trouble was going to be a really valuable competitor for BC. Well, teams have figured him out. Let's just leave it at that. They were, anytime that the ball got into him against Wake Forest, Steve Forbes just had all of his defenders basically collapse on him, 2-3 guys, and it was like either a bad pass or an immediate turnover. And this just went on forever. Like you could not get the ball into him because they would just collapse onto him and he had no idea what to do. It was tough to watch. It was just tough. And BC had chances with free throws. They were hitting those for a better part of the game, and down the stretch, they just weren't able to do it. This was a winnable game. This was frustrating to watch because Wake Forest was not playing better than BC, but BC beat themselves in this game again. So now you have this game, after losing a game that you probably could have won, you're now 0-1 in the ACC. You've lost 3 in a row. You now play Stonehill College. You play them at home, and now you're on upset alert because you just have not played well, and Dartmouth is worse than Stonehill. And you worry to yourself, is this going to happen again? Because they're not getting things done. They're not. I'm worried because to me, I'm going to say this right now. I'm not sure what Earl Grant is going to be able to do with this team. I now look back with different lenses on last year and wonder, did BC last year underperform? You had an NBA center. Quentin Post was drafted in the second round. You had Devin McLaughlin is an absolute animal right now for Vanderbilt. Jaden Zachary's fine. Mason Matson's good. Claudel Harris is okay. You had all these guys last year, and all you could do was make the NIT with that. This team is not as talented as last year at all. They don't have scorers. They don't have guys that consistently do what they did last year. I'm just worried, folks. That's what I'm saying. I'm not piling on this team. I'm just saying there's months before this schedule, and things are just going to get harder. You got to play Cooper Flag at one point. You got to play UNC. You got to play Louisville, who's improved. I'm not sure where the wins are going to come. I unless this team can figure something out, if they can figure out how to get Dion Brown scoring or get Elijah Strong to stop getting in foul trouble so easily, all of these things, if they can fix that, then maybe they can start winning games. I need to see it before I believe it. And that's my last thoughts. We'll be back again tomorrow. The portal opens officially. I expect to hear some more news on maybe guys entering, and maybe we'll start to hear who BC's actually interested in, because I think once they enter the portal officially, that's when you'll probably hear BC's names linked to some more players. We'll get into all of that on tomorrow's show. Plus, Bill O'Brien, I believe tomorrow, is talking about the Pinstripe Bowl, so we'll get some thoughts on that as well. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.